السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. المنطقة العربية باتت تعج بالإرهابيين الوافدين من كل أقطار العالم، ولكن بدأ البعض شد رحال العودة إلى ديارهم، وتداعيات ذلك ستكون وخيمة بحسب الخبراء. مع مؤلف كتاب نادي القتلة الصحفي الألماني مايكل اوبرسكالسكيهل من الداخل، معكم زينب صفار، تابعونا. كلما ناضلت ازددت شبابا، هكذا يقول الصحافي والكاتب الألماني من أصول بولندية مايكل اوبرسكالسكيهل. لعل دينامية مايكل الصحفية دفعته إلى الغوص في عالم الاستخبارات بكل رموزها، وهو توج خبرته في إصدار شهري هو صحيفة جهايم باللغة الألمانية، وإصدار باللغة الإنجليزية بعنوان سري جدا، التي تتطرق إلى النشاطات السرية للCIA أو وكالة الاستخبارات المركزية الأمريكية. مايكل المستشار السابق للرئيس السابق لجنوب أفريقيا الراحل نيلسون مانديلا، عمل أيضا مستشارا لعدد من المنظمات الداعمة لحق شعوب الدول النامية في الحرية: إيران والCIA في أمريكا الوسطى، والCIA نادي القتلة، والموساد، وكتاب أسرار التجسس الفضائي الذي يتقفى خلفية إيران جيت، هي مجموعة إصدارات مايكل اوبرسكالسكيهل. فماذا يقول عما آلت إليه المنطقة العربية اليوم من إرهاب وقتل وتشريد؟ وهل يعزو ذلك إلى فشل استخباري أو إلى استراتيجية معينة؟ وما تداعيات هذه النزعة المتطرفة والتكفيرية على المجتمع الغربي؟ وهل فشل التحالف الدولي في ردع تقدم تنظيم داعش في العراق وعين العرب يشير إلى طبيعة هذا التحالف وفاعليته وقوته الردعية؟ وما مدى تورط الغرب بسياساته في خلق هذه الأزمة في منطقتنا؟ Mr. Michael Operskalsky, German writer and journalist and publisher of Geheim, or Top Secret magazine that specializes and deals with CIA and U.S. covert activities. Welcome to the Inside, sir.
Hello.
You're most welcome, sir. Now, as we watch the Middle East tearing itself apart into bits and pieces in a flurry of violence, many observers are disbelieving and they are shocked by what they are seeing, you know, those very fast events taking place and the repercussions of those events. Even they say this is a very big mess. How did it become such a big mess? It apparently shocked everyone by its unexpectedness. Is this to be considered an intelligence failure or what?
I think it was a very specially planned operation. That, of course, I have to admit, went faster than those who proposed it and masterminded had expected. But in principle, it was masterminded, organized, and hammered through by the Western intelligence services, especially CIA, but not only CIA. A lot of people, especially here in the region, forget the German intelligence service, who is small but very decisive if it comes to certain relations to certain forces in the region. And of course Mossad, the Zionist entities service.
And the MI6.
And MI6, right. So and
now you have more intelligence apparatuses that are working from their sides in certain countries like the ISI, like the MIT, which is the Turkish intelligence also.
Right. And the MIT is very closely cooperating, especially with two agencies. That's the Mossad. So the so-called Islamic image Erdogan himself is portraying is a complete lie. It's American Islam.
Is this a personal opinion, or you have?
It's a matter of fact.
Okay.
Look, this Erdogan was crying about so-called atrocities, etc., etc. But the same day the Palestinians were slaughtered, he renewed the cooperation with the Mossad and MIT on an even higher level. And this is known. Second, the MIT is very, very close to the West German service, BND, even closer to BND than to the American CIA, because this is logic. You have a lot of Turkish people living, millions of, better to say, Turkish people living in Germany, so there's a very close relationship on various levels, economically, human, etc., etc. So you have really a very complex but intelligence oriented network that is based, that is concentrating on the Middle East, and develop those things that we unfortunately have to witness these days, long time ago. And unfortunately, I have to say, although I really love this region very much, but my Arab brothers kept their eyes very blind. And their reaction or non-reaction towards those developments.
What about their intelligence apparatuses? The
Arab ones. I don't want to be unpolite, but I have to be frank. They are not very useful. I think, to be frank, there are only 2 or maybe 3 services who are effective. These are the Iranians, for sure. Second, the Syrian, despite of the fact that Syria is under heavy pressure, having heavy losses, human-wise and material, etc. And to a certain extent, the Lebanese military intelligence. This I have to admit. All the other services, really, unfortunately I have to say, they are not very effective or directly on the payroll by foreigners. Just when the so-called uprising against the Syrian government started, 2011, the State Department and other semi-official agencies in America published a document that can be quoted now because it's official, that the American plan was to divide Syria in at least 3 different parts and regions, as they had a similar document for Iraq some years ago. And they were using from the very beginning the so-called uprising against Bashar for developing that strategy. For them, unfortunately, the Syrian people were much more stronger than they thought. So, despite of all bloodshed and terrible things, this plan was not hammered through. So they got more and more radical movements to be established in order to keep the pressure on and to even double it. So they ended up with the so-called Islamic State, Daesh.
So, Michael, you agree that the intelligence had prior information and notice about the growth of such kind of fighters and terrorists?
Please allow me to give you another example so that our people, your readers and viewers can understand. I know quite well the situation in Germany. I have no intelligence apparatus under control. Unfortunately, maybe in the future, inshallah, then the situation will be different. But I could tell you now certain places in Germany where Daesh supporters are meeting openly, recruiting and sending people for the so-called jihad.
What about the government, the German government?
They know. I was attacked last year. At that time, Daesh was not important. It was one group of the so-called Free Syrian Army. Directly attacked to kill me. I was fortunate enough, so I'm with you today, but they were retreating to a base. And the police, I called the police, and there was a nice police officer. He said, better you leave this place, you are detected. He said, but I'm a citizen, here's my passport, I'm a journalist. So no, we cannot do anything better. My personal advice is you go. Why? These people are supported by some people bigger and more important than us. That's to say the German Mukhabarat, the German security.
Maybe they want to get rid of them. to go out of the country and, you know, just finish.
They want to use them, but they don't want to smash their network. They could easily smash their network. The thing is, they even if they see the character of people they recruit, the Daesh people, most of them are broken people on the very low level of existence, poor, broken people, no values, no nothing. They know no Islam, they know no religion, they know nothing. They just know slogans, and they are easy to be recruited. And some of our drug addicts, as a proof, I can give you documents on that. And then they are sent to Syria or Iraq, now to Iraq also. But the network, it's a tiny network, it's controlled by others who will not go.
Who recruits them? Do you have any idea?
These are the recruits. Some are Iraqis, some are Syrian, some are Algerian, and this is also an interesting thing is that the Algerians are from the old groupings, FIS and GIA, you know, who caused problems for the Algerian government years ago. And they were supported by the West German intelligence. Even arms and ammunition were given to GIA and FIS when they were thinking, the German intelligence, that the Algerian government can be toppled easily, but it didn't happen. But some of the structures who were established in those days are now used for Daesh in Iraq, Syria.
Now, allow me here, Michael, to read something about the issue that the US and Obama administration did know about ISIS attacks against Iraq. It says here that the elephant in the room, however, is that the US intelligence community did anticipate the rise of the Islamic State. There is now mounting evidence in the public record that President Obama had been warned of a major attack on Iraq by IS extremists. And according to an unidentified former Pentagon official, President Obama was given detailed and specific intelligence about the rise of the Islamic State as part of his daily briefing for at least a year, containing strong and granular data on the emergence of ISIS. The source said, quote, we were ready to fire on a moment's notice on a couple hundred targets, but no order was given. In some cases, targets were tracked for a long period of time, but then slipped away, reported Fox News Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge. The White House neither confirmed nor denied this report. Of course, we will talk a bit more about this issue and about the negative repercussions of having those extremist fighters coming back home, what would happen then. But we have to stop now for a short break. Mr. Michael اوبرسكالسكيهل. إذا فاصل قصير ونعود، لا تذهبوا بعيدا. المحقق الصحفي البريطاني نفيز أحمد مؤلف كتاب النقطة الصفر توقع بإعادة اجتياح الولايات المتحدة وبريطانيا للعراق للقضاء على تمرد لمسلحين إسلاميين هناك، حيث كتب يقول: لأن الولايات المتحدة وبريطانيا وفرنسا تناور لتصعيد الأعمال العسكرية في العراق وسوريا ضد داعش، وفي عملية خطط لأن تستمر سنوات وفق قوله، فإن السلطات تنادي في الوقت نفسه باتخاذ إجراءات جديدة في محاولة منها لتوفير السلامة في الوطن ولصد مخاطر الجهاديين التي تستهدف الدول الغربية. الكاتب والصحفي الاستقصائي الألماني مايكل اوبرسكالسكيهل كيف يقرأ كل هذا وما الذي سيجري في تلك الدول، ولا سيما في ظل تقارير تشير إلى المئات من البريطانيين الذين ذهبوا للقتال في سوريا، ولكن الكثيرين منهم ينوون العودة إلى المملكة المتحدة، بعضهم بسبب شعورهم بخيبة الأمل حيال سمي الدولة الإسلامية.
First of all, it already started. So nobody should take a blind eye on it. And it's not only the recruiting. but also violence started recently, not only in Germany, but also in France, in Britain, Netherlands. Especially now, while many courts are going to be more and more active against the genocide the so-called Islamic State is preparing and already starting in the northern part of Syria, but also violent clashes against Alawites who are living in Germany. So anyhow, it started, it will explode even more. So this is exactly happening. But are the authorities reacting towards this? Not really. It's a lot of propaganda show, no doubt. It's a lot of...
I mean, in the UK they're trying to take some actions against the people who would be come back
really,
and monitor them closely.
They monitor them.
Even the Freedom Act, which is very important back
yes,
in
but
the
I will
US,
give
they're
you
going to break it now in order to monitor all those people.
But I will give you an example. They are monitoring those because if it's not 400, only 400 Britons who are down
500,
there,
as they said here.
or 500, there are at least 500-600 Germans and more French and others. Some of them will come back as completely broken people, disillusioned, etc. They're going to monitor those. They're not going to monitor, and I can prove this, monitor the real active structures, because if they would do so, they would close them automatically, because according to the law, what they do, they would have to close. If I start tomorrow a structure collecting money and recruits for the Palestinian liberation struggle in Gaza, I tell you now, in next minute I will be behind the bars. And for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. So they know the laws are there, the infrastructure to smash them is there. There's not the will to do it.
But don't you think that this is going to lead to an intense Islamophobia or more criminalizing of Muslims?
This is actually happening.
I mean, this is one of the repercussions of this fight here. It's going to be very much negative towards Muslims and Islam.
I'm fully with you, because what you have now is that extremely right-wing pro-fascist and neo-Nazi forces are taking up the issue, saying Muslims out. Take the campaign of Marine Le Pen, the fascist party in Front National in France, and the similar forces in Germany and Britain. Of course they use it, there's no doubt. But, and of course it's going to, you know, on the day-to-day politics and even the living of people, Muslims in Europe, it's going to be very dangerous. Women who are wearing a hijab are beaten up by people, not automatically fascist, but you know. So that Islamophobia is
going to increase on the rise.
Everywhere, yeah.
Yes.
But it doesn't stop the activities of the Takfiri.
Recruitment, yes.
No.
Yes. Now, the U.S., through retired General John Allen, who is the envoy charged with the building of the coalition against the ISIS, has admitted the failure of the international coalition to deter ISIS advance in Iraq, and also the US-led airstrikes have so far failed to prevent its advance in the Syrian Kurdish town of Kobani, though the Kurdish fighters are doing a very good job. They're trying to fight fair and square and try to...
because if they wanted to finish them, they could do. I give you one example. They finished the Libyan army, so the Gaddafi's army, in roughly speaking 3 hours, by just heavily orchestrated and precise air attacks. This has a lot of reasons why it was so easy. It's not only the question that these people are genius, it was also a failure on the Libyan side, but in any case, in principle, they are capable of organizing heavy blows. What they are doing now, it's minor things. The heavy fighting is doing by the Peshmerga, the Kurd resistance fighters. They are really doing the job. They do not want to finish Daesh. They want to limit, to keep them under control.
This is what a former diplomat also indicated, that the US does not attempt to crash on the ISIS fighters, but to limit or to control their fighting and whatever, in order to take some time to achieve whatever they aim at achieving.
I think there's only one key difference between the Daesh strategy at the moment and the American and most of the Western strategy. They are fine with the massacres. They are fine, that's to say, Langley, United States and Britain and Berlin. They are fine with the day-to-day terror. They are very fine in toppling the governments, and they are very fine in all levels. Only one thing they don't like, the attempt to create an Islamic State that could be, maybe, some kind of regional power, because they don't like regional powers at all, whatever direction they have. And there are many papers, if it is from the State Department or the CIA, etc., but also from West German Foreign Ministry, etc., saying we don't like regional powers. Because regional powers sometimes get out of control and take into consideration the resources. There's a regional power with strong resources.
Now, a security analyst, Mr. Charles Shoebridge, a former British Army and Metropolitan Police counterintelligence officer, said the crisis across Iraq and Syria cannot be resolved without first addressing the extent to which Western policies created the crisis in the first place. And he said also, quote, the US, UK and France contributed to the collapse of governance in Syria by funding, training and equipping moderate rebels with little realistic consideration of with whom such funds, trained fighters and non-lethal aid would end up. Similarly, the West did not or did nothing to discourage vast flows of funds and arms from their allies, Saudi Arabia, Qatar and others, towards rebel groups irrespective of, or perhaps because of, their extreme interpretations of Sunni Islam, unquote. So now it seems that they can't control what they have unleashed.
To a certain extent, yes, they can't control, but they don't want to control. Again, I give you examples, easy things that they could do. A lot of funds are going through, from the Gulf countries, Qatar, etc., they're going through European banks. They could easily stop it, easily, because they stop it in other cases. Try the Palestinians who try to get funds to rebuild Gaza and the resistance. They have to do 1,000 tricks to get their funds, because of the banks who are completely controlled by the Zionists and the intelligence apparatus. So why? It is easily possible. They don't want. Second, they know, for example, Germany signed a contract for new arms and ammunition to Qatar. Light arms. So they know that most of that stuff is not going to end up in Qatar. Maybe for a minute they're just repacking it, and then it goes to Iraq and especially to Syria.
To the fighters.
They know it. They know it. Even there was a media report that discovered nothing happened. The contract was signed and approved by the government, because these kind of contracts can only go through if it is approved by the government. So we talk about a very, very dirty game. Very dirty game. Dirty against the people of the Middle East, and dirty also against the German and European citizens, because they are paying with their taxes for these kind of things.
What is the most recent top secrets that you have divulged in your Geheim issue?
Number one, what we continuously expose regularly. Unfortunately, we are not a daily magazine, which we would like to be, are the dirty tricks against Syria. And the cooperation between the intelligence services and the different forces in Syria trying to topple the government. The role of the media and journalists.
Disinformation campaigns.
Disinformation. We know of journalists who are paid by intelligence operators, sent to Lebanon, to Syria, under the cover of free journalism.
Yes.
But in fact, they are very dirty. We expose a lot of networks, and even what is very painful, in some cases you have people who are calling themselves being alternative to the mass media or to the politicians, etc. Even some of them who are calling themselves sympathetic to the Arabs and to the and they are enemies. They are sometimes worse enemies.
Do you publish the Geheim only in German, or you have also an English version of it?
No, we are going to reorganize the English version, inshallah, very soon.
Hopefully soon. Right, Mr. Maikel Operskalski, German writer, journalist, and publisher of Geheim, or Top Secret magazine that specializes in CIA and U.S. covert activities. Many thanks indeed for joining us.
It was a pleasure for me.
It's our pleasure, sir. إذا لقاء جديد في الأسبوع المقبل مع ضيف جديد وقضية جديدة ودائما من الداخل. للمزيد من التواصل بريدنا theinside@almayadeen.net وصفحتنا على الفيسبوك من الداخل. من كل فريق عمل من الداخل من كل الميادين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.